Welcome back to the Hoop Bar. We saw a butt kicking from the Brooklyn Nets to the Milwaukee Bucks as they pretty much handled them in the second half of game one and just completely dismantled them in game two, something I didn't predict. So let's start off with you, Rahul. You're pretty vocal on this over the weekend. What are your thoughts on Giannis and the Bucks after the two playoff games this weekend?
I mean, kudos to the Nets because they obviously made adjustments to play to their opponent. So they're playing good defense. They held them to what, 86 points? I think so. I think that's what it was. That's really good because the Bucks are the number one team in scoring. So how are they doing that, right? I mean, the Bucks scored 74 points in game one in the paint, and they shot 6 of 30 from the 3-point line in game one. So you're thinking, okay, Bucks, you got what you wanted in the paint, like the Celtics did against the Nets. They destroyed them in the paint. The Bucks did the same thing. Okay, if you can knock down your shots, then you have a chance. That's great. You can take that away from game one, but then to come out like that in game two and be down, and thank you, Bucks, because all of us Laker fans should thank them, because if it wasn't for the Bucks, the Lakers would have had the largest deficit in the playoffs when they were down 39 points to the Phoenix Suns. But instead, the Bucks even topped us and said, "Hey, hold my beer," and they're down 49 points in a playoff game. 49 points in a playoff game. Giannis, his attitude after this game is, oh, I never get too high, I never get too low. His attitude before the playoffs started, we'll see what happens. I don't know if it's going to be different this year. Remember, we talked about this. So it's not even him, it's his own game. Giannis, go back, off season, work on your shot. We talked about the Nets. They give him the most space than any other team, 7 feet distance. They're still doing that. Blake Griffin is giving him that. And then when there was a stat, and shout out to Spectrum, I think Spectrum Stats. It was on the Windhurst show. Really quick, and I'll end it there. They said that Blake Griffin is guarding him. When Blake Griffin's guarding him, he's pushing him out to like 12 feet. When everybody else is guarding him, they're pushing him to about 8 feet. So Blake Griffin has giving him space. And then when he tries to attack, he meets him in a spot where Giannis is still not comfortable shooting. And so Giannis is just trying to get around a big body Griffin, try to get layups and angle himself, and it's not working. So this is a good game plan. But again, why are you so easy to game plan against? I get why players low-key disrespect him, because it's time for you to evolve your game, dude. That's all I got to say.
Tony, what are your thoughts on Giannis and the Bucks?
First of all, Blake Griffin has been a surprise in this series. He's actually been playing better than when he played in Detroit. Makes me kind of suspect. I guess he didn't want to be in Detroit, but he's been hustling for loose balls, playing defense. Like Rahul said, he's been, keeping Giannis out of the paint. But then again, Giannis has never had enough footwork. He needs some work on his footwork, especially down in the paint. He's just shooting mid-range jumpers. He's playing like a guard, a 7-foot guard, very athletic, but he hasn't developed that the footwork, especially down in the paint. And basically, Durant has been the best player. Him and Kawhi are up there as being the best players in the playoffs so far. I mean, Kevin Durant is pretty much his old self.
The Ganz. You've been catching these games relatively early now since you're about 3 hours ahead or behind Pacific time. What are your thoughts on Giannis and the Bucks?
Look, it's an unfair matchup. It is, because there's a lot of pressure on Giannis. A lot. If he doesn't perform, you have Drew Holiday, but you don't. I mean, come on, he's not a superstar yet. He's not. I don't even think he's made an All-Star team. He's been close. And then you have with the Brooklyn, you just have too many weapons. You have Kevin Durant, and if he's off, you have Kyrie. Both are capable of putting up a 30-piece easy. And then you got, they're role players who play really, really well. I just think it's not a fair matchup if Giannis doesn't play like an MVP, and he hasn't been. Just like Rahul said, and I'll give him kudos when I disagreed with him, when I'm like, hey, he's just trying to psych him up. He's just trying. No, he's mentally like not where he needs to be to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, in my opinion, I think he's checked out of Miami. I think this is it. They're going to be swept. And I do think that he's going to end up somewhere else because, and you know what? It sucks for these small market teams. Like you said, Tony, on Detroit, Blake Griffin was depressed. He was in Detroit. Now he's in Brooklyn. All of a sudden, production goes up. I know it's his teammates that have something to do with it, but location. It does matter.
Well, good point. I mean, and the other thing is, we didn't mention Middleton. Isn't he supposed to be the second superstar? Like, he's failing again in the playoffs. So yeah, you're right. Giannis has, not the only one to blame for sure, dude. Like, you have to be prepared for this team, right? Like, Steve Nash was prepared more than you. If Steve Nash outcoached you, that means that you're just not doing a good job. Nothing against Steve Nash. He's obviously able to plan, but there's no way that you go to your B or C plan and Steve Nash can keep up as much as you, because you have the experience in this league, in the playoffs, making runs, losing to, like you, Matt, pointed out, to the Raptors in 2019. So I just don't get it. They keep regressing. I agree. I think Giannis will think that Giannis and Lillard might need to team up at this point. I don't know how that happens.
Also, the experience. Kevin Durant, Kai, I've been there. Have they been to the finals? They've won championships, so they know what an adversity is like, which I don't think Milwaukee has experienced yet. Although they've been to the playoffs the last few years, but they've always been knocked out in the second round. And people are starting to criticize Giannis for not being able to get over the hump. And like Amit said, he might have to leave the small market team and maybe go to a big market team where maybe people could probably appreciate him more. Or
how long do you think James Harden will be out, and honestly, will it matter for this series and potentially even next series?
I don't. When you have a healthy Durant and a healthy Kyrie, and the type of the way the role players are playing, and I'm going to give Steve Nash his flowers for making some adjustments. They probably can go past this series, past the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe. The way the Western Conference Finals is panning out with who we thought was going to be there. Now you're not facing Anthony Davis and LeBron. I am worried about the Clippers for them because I do think they're playing. They finally got their groove back. I don't know if they need him, but I don't know how far he is away. How far do they say he is away from coming back? Do you guys know?
No, it's still up in the air from what I heard. Rahul, did you hear anything differently regarding regarding Harden's injury and how long he'll be out?
It's just indefinitely, and you have to know that he missed 5 weeks, not too long before the playoffs started. So if you take that,
he's not come back. He's not unless they need him, but they don't need him.
Unless they're down 0-2 in the Eastern Conference Finals, he's not coming back sooner than the finals, probably. That's what I think.
Yeah, and if he comes back, he's just going to be a shooter. I mean, don't expect the same guy that drives in, that gets contact, or even moves the ball as a point guard as much. Probably because he's a fantastic shooter. He is.
You look at the field in the Eastern Conference. Who's going to beat them even without Harden, right? There's no, even Philadelphia is hobbled themselves. Atlanta doesn't play defense. The Bucks were the best chance, and they've laid an egg. So for whatever reason you want to call it, whether it's a better improvement on defense, but it's also because they're the same one-trick pony, right? So whatever the reason is, they were the best chance in the East. Now you look out West, and for that you need Harden, I think, when they get to the finals. So I think they'll wait for him until they get to the finals.
Tony, do you agree with these guys, or do you have your own opinion regarding Harden?
Honestly, I agree with these guys. I don't think they need Harden. They can win the championship without Harden. They have too much firepower. I mean, they're just stacked. The team is loaded, especially on the offensive end. And they do play defense. They have shown some instances where they play defense, but there's just too much firepower on that team. They have one of the two top 10 players in the league, probably the best player in the league, and Kevin Durant, and a top 10 player, and Kyrie Irving, and then.
It would be interesting to see if that was the case where he doesn't come back until the finals, like what that does, being that it's the finals for their chemistry, like they establish chemistry the next 8 or so games or 6 games at max. I mean, at minimum 6 games. And then he comes back, and what does that do? I know they're used to going in and out of the lineup, but in the finals, it's a different beast, right? So that's interesting too. Would they want to give him a couple of games, even if they're up in the series in the Eastern Conference Finals, get him in the mix instead of just throwing him out there in the finals, because it's the finals against a tougher opponent, let's face it, out of the West?
I don't do it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't risk chemistry if they're playing. Let's say they sweep here and they sweep again, like why would you, right? It's
So you're saying you would bring him back in the finals? You would wait? You wouldn't?
I wouldn't bring him back if let's say they sweep this series and the next series, and he's able to play in the finals. I don't know that I would bring him back. Or not at the role that he's been playing.
Oh, you wouldn't bring him back at all. Okay, I was saying that if he was due back in the finals, that you would potentially bring him back the last 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals so he could build chemistry for the finals. But you're saying,
oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree with you.
Like you're giving yourself a buffer for the weekend.
Yeah.
If he's a buffer of 2 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, even if they're up 2-0, bring him back for the last game if they're up 3-0.
That's a smarter play, and he deserves to play in the finals because they were both hurt at one point, and he carried the team. So yeah,
so he's going to want to be in the finals. So yeah, give him a buffer in the Eastern Conference Final.
I have to still believe. I have to stick with my pick that the Bucks will find something in Milwaukee. I want to. It was easy. It was easy
you've
before
been
the
riding
beginning.
Milwaukee this while, so I'll give you credit for staying with him.
Yeah, I have to stand because if you think you're gonna zig that way, I'll zag the other way. Like I have to stand with my pick. It's as far as Milwaukee in 6. I think Giannis. I think Middleton. Some home cooking. They'll find something. It's just the first 2 home games. They just held serve. So if Milwaukee comes back and holds serve, coming back to Game 5, they have more momentum than Brooklyn would. You might see Harden back then. But again, I'm gonna zag where you guys zig. So that's my thoughts on that.
And that's fair, Matt. And I just wanted one stat because that's what I wanted to go with. Like it's natural. Like they won 2 games at home, so what? But I was listening to Windhorst, and there was an interesting stat. You guys think that it's harder to come back from 3-1 or 0-2?
0-2.
3-1's harder.
Harder. I'm sorry, harder. 3-1. You're right.
Difficult.
No. 0-2. 0-2 is definitely harder than 3-1.
3-1.
So just for our listeners, right? The rate for coming back from 3-1 is about 5%, 15 out of 250. And the rate for 0-2 is 22 and 300. So 6.5% to 5.5%. So I think Windhorst's point was that it doesn't happen all that much in terms of the difference between 0-2 and 3-1. You would think you can come back faster if you're down 0-2 because the other team still needs 2 games, but it's not that much better. Like Amit said, it's barely better than down 3-1. So that's what they're up against. I mean, the Clippers just did it, and they did it even worse because for them, they lost the first 2 games at home. So I don't know. It's still possible. You're right, Matt. But you got to see something from Giannis and the coach. And
the Clippers lost the first 2 games at home, and they won pretty much all the road games.
Honestly, there's nothing like that series. Like that, we can get to the Clippers, but I'm with Amit there. I'm with the Ganz. Sorry, I'm with the Ganz because I think that the Clippers that is an improbable feat. That one of the most improbable feats that they've done. It's not. Don't listen to Skip and say it's better than 3-1 LeBron in the finals against a 73-win team. That's nonsense, but it's still a great accomplishment.
Thank you for watching this clip from the latest episode of the Hoop Bar. Check the description for a link to the full episode on Spotify. Please consider liking and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.